The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army.
This just in, the culture wars are in full effect. They never actually went anywhere. And the fascinating thing about this is the new approach, as we discussed on Monday, that conservatives are taking to trying to win this culture war. They have a desire to conserve, right? Before I finish that thought, let's just put it into context. They have a full desire to conserve the status quo, to conserve what America was and what America currently is. I mentioned this clip, but let me play it here. This is Bill O'Reilly clearly outlining what the American power structure is.
Let me repeat that. America is run primarily by white Christian men. And there is a segment of our population who hates that, despises that power structure.
So let's be clear, right? This is a power structure that prior to this wave of the reactionary right, they were proud of it. They would challenge you. They would say, I dare you to change it. Yes, it's run by white Christian men, and they've changed the term Christian to straight because they have found a way, this nice way of merging the forces of conservative secularists and conservative fundamentalists, right? If you just change that Christian to straight, then you have a nice alliance that you can use to fight back against cultural, social, political, and economic change. And so this power structure, they know it exists. They know full and damn well that it is ubiquitous. It is in every part of our American society. The vast majority of politicians, white, straight men, the vast majority of billionaires and millionaires in this country, white, straight men, all of our leaders, white, straight men, even in a country that is almost 50-50 in male and female with actually, I think the tide has tilted towards women, but we still have a society that's overwhelmingly dominated and run by white, Christian, straight men. So they know this, and they know that they cannot win when the argument is against their identity from which they benefit. What is a benefit? From which they benefit. Right? They benefit from this identity because that identity is at the core of the power structure of this country. And so as we challenge that identity, the only way they could push back against it was to say, you're attacking our identity. You're playing identity politics. You're making it hard to be a white, straight man. And now they've gone from being the boastful, prideful, arrogant, people who benefit from this privilege to being, we're the victims, because it's a judo move, right? It's you use your opponent's strength against them. And so they just did a reverse and they flipped it on us. And now they're trying to make it taboo to address the power structure. Not in the way they're making it taboo is by saying, you are the real racist because you're talking about me being a white Christian straight man. But no. We're talking about the benefit that you get from this society and the desire that you have to maintain that power structure that was created to serve white Christian men on the back of everyone who wasn't a white Christian straight man. So in order for us to win this fight, we absolutely have to address that identity. They are the masters of identity politics. The reason we have to fight against this is because they have been privileged in their identity since the inception of this country. Through the use of brute force, through the use of disease and weapons, and the use of using their physical strength to beat their women into submission throughout the ages, through the use of propaganda, through the use of manipulation, through every way imaginable, they used every weapon at their disposal to sustain that identity, that power structure that benefits that overwhelmingly benefits white Christian straight men. Okay, now that's the stage. The new culture wars that have never really gone anywhere. They've just moved into a new battlefront, and progressives and liberals and people who aren't conservative, we are behind the eight ball. We're behind the eight ball because the new culture wars have been and are on new media, and they are nothing more than a daily recitation of talking points that get their white Christian straight men angry. That's it. Every single day, without fail, over and over and over again. Whereas people like me, my friend Sean King, other individuals who point out police brutality every single day, we point that out as a means of addressing the systemic injustices and the actual lives that are taken or killed, people who are killed. That's what we focus on a regular basis. Yes, it has it's in a similar fashion. It is a movement to actually affect change. And we bring this to the attention of the people every single day. One, because it's happening every single day, but then two, because that's the only way we're going to change this. The opposite side, the countervailing force in this culture war, is an everyday recitation of a black person who did something wrong. Or of today, the outrage is over Kendrick Lamar, the rapper who brought a white fan on stage. She started singing his song or rapping his lyrics, and she used the N-word. And he was like, well, hold on, little sis. You can't use that word. Just mute that word. And now that becomes the focal point today for the people like Paul Joseph Watson of InfoWars and Ben Shapiro of the Daily Wire. This is their daily outrage because this black guy, actually, let me play it for you.
What the hell's wrong with this guy? Like, he knows what the lyrics to his own song are. That is not her fault. I'm sorry. That is not the fault of the white lady who gets up there. It's not like he said to her beforehand, go easy on the lyrics of my song. You wrote them there, dude. You don't want somebody actually reading the lyrics of your song or doing the lyrics to your song. Don't write the lyrics in there or ask the lady up. If you've got a problem with a white lady rapping your song as you wrote it, then maybe you should have invited a black lady up there to rap your song as you wrote it. You got plenty of black fans there. It's absurd. Okay, and I think people caught on to it. So a lot of folks on Twitter were like, this is just a setup. Right? They brought a fan up to sing and then flipped when she said the N-word. And he knew what he was doing. This woman's life is going to be ruined on social media now. She's going to be claimed to be a racist when she just wanted to go to a concert and sing, presumably with someone she was a fan of. It's just ridiculous.
So, I don't really care about his commentary per se, the logical fallacies in his commentary, which are prevalent on a regular basis. He's not as smart. Anyway, that's besides the point. The point is that the new culture war has been for a while, and I can't really call it new. It has been to feed their audience this steady supply of anti-racism. This is all they do. This is all they do all day long, every single day. And there have been plenty of conservative billionaires who understand the importance of this minutia, of this anti-racist minutia, of this, in its own way, dog whistle racism. They understand it's important to have a steady supply of this. And so the new front of the culture wars that I think liberals and progressives and people who aren't conservative have lost is in new media. And we've been saying this for a long time, but it's so evident now with the rise of people like Jordan Peterson, right? The idea, and there's so many things to talk about. There's another facet to this that I want to address. So this is not the end of my argument. This is just the beginning of the argument. But new media elevated someone like Jordan Peterson, who had a career as an academic and was published in many different journals and cited many different times. But they recruited him, or he recruited himself, into this space where he can continue the culture wars from his perspective, which is actually not really focused on anti-racism as much as it is anti-patriarchy. Right? It's just reaction to the patriarchy. And so he's doubling down on the patriarchy, on toxic masculinity, which these words, while many people are turned off and repulsed by those phrases, they have a brand new meaning when you consider who Jordan Peter is intellectualizing for, right? He is literally putting an intellectual veneer on top of the incel movement, who literally have killed, in the last month, how many people have they killed? Like 20 to 25 people in the last 2 months. I mean, the ideology of involuntary celibates has literally driven people to kill. And it is a toxic ideology. It is an ideology of entitlement to women's bodies. So these phrases that people are turned off by, they have such an important meaning now more than ever, because there's an entire movement of individuals who are causing death and destruction as a result of their hatred of women and their sense of entitlement to women's bodies. And here you have Jordan Peterson giving this intellectual veneer under the guise of social cultural shifts to enforce monogamy and to promote monogamy, as we discussed on Monday, right? Here he is entering into this new media sphere. And what's important about this is that in his academic career, while he may have been successful, he was not the Jordan Peterson that everyone knows today. The reason we know him today is because of his lending of intellectual credibility, or giving a intellectual veneer to this toxic ideology and his anti-patriarchy. Reactionary politics. That's why he is making $80,000 a month on Patreon. That's why he could sell $800 tickets to go hear him speak. That's why he makes the money, not because of his work in psychology. Let's be clear, right? He did not come onto the scene until he became a reactionary. And it's through new media. It's through all of these angry white men, quite literally, who are funneling money into these voices. But the opposite side of it is a set of conservative billionaires who understand the value of new media, who pour millions upon, tens of millions of dollars into people like Ben Shapiro and his platform, David Rubin and his platform. Like, they are backed by the entirety of Breitbart, backed by billionaires, because they know it is far more important to have a daily flow and a daily supply of the most commentary on the most minute issues, so long as they can keep a steady level of anger towards all of the forces that would fight against that white male power structure in this country. Anything that is anti-racist, they have people like Ben Shapiro there to give an intellectual veneer, to a quasi-logical veneer to his anti-racism, his reactionary racism, right? Anything that's patriarchal, that's anti-patriarchy. Now you have Jordan Peterson there to fill in the gap, right? And so you're going to continuously see people being placed and elevated in these new media platforms to be the reactionary to anti-racism, to be the reactionary to anti-patriarchy, to be the reactionary to anything that challenges the white male Christian straight power structure in this country that just a few years ago they were proud of. But now they realize, well, we can't win the culture wars by being proud of it. We win the culture wars by making it hard for people to talk about it and calling reverse racism and saying that feminism has become toxic and just being reactionary and being the anti, so to speak. The next facet. Well, let's breathe, and then we'll take the next facet of this. The next facet of this, the strategy. The strategy includes taking someone who has, distinguished or not, someone with a career in academia, right? Jordan Peterson, psychologist. I forget which. I guess it's Sam Harris. Sam Harris and Dave Rubin, they're almost like the same person to me. But Sam Harris who is a neuroscientist. Charles Murray, he's not really in this space, but he's the sociologist, taking people from academia and using those bona fides as qualifiers for social critique, and using that as a shield against criticisms of their social critique. And what I mean by that is, for example, Jordan Peterson is, if you criticize his work, well, he does it and his audience does this. What they do is they say, oh, well, he's been cited 9,000 times in his work. So he's, it's an appeal. It's, in a sense, it's an appeal to authority. It's an appeal to the masses. And it's an appeal to intellectual superiority. Now, the last one, I just kind of, the first two are real logical fallacies. But it's trying to say that you cannot criticize, you who are not as distinguished in your career as Jordan Peterson, cannot criticize his work because he's been cited in Google Scholar 9,000 times. But wait a minute, Sway. His work literally has nothing to do with his social critique and any of their, so like Sam Harris, he's a neuroscientist. Like, what do you possibly can say it against him? Well, he might be a neuroscientist, and I have no idea about his work in neuroscience, right? But in this world of social critique and political commentary and political analysis, yeah, those skills don't necessarily transfer over into here. Most certainly, your accomplishments in those fields have nothing to do with the realm that you're stepping into. It's like me, who has an education and background in political science, international relations, and actually know what the hell I'm talking about from a theoretical framework as well as a social cultural framework. It's like me going into their field and saying, well, I have 600 episodes of a very popular nationwide podcast, and I have thousands of people who listen to me, so I'm going to jump into your field of psychology, and you can't say nothing about me. It just, as absurd as that sounds, so too is what they're doing. Your education in field A does not translate to your knowledge in field B. You could not even, let's put it like this. They could not transfer outside of their reach, the reach of their audience. Let's say they had no audience, right? Because in our world, in my world, political commentary and social critique, the size of your audience actually trumps everything else, right? So let's take away Sam Harris's audience size, and let's take away Jordan Peterson's audience size, right? And we just bring them over into our world. They could not get a job in journalism based on their work in psychology and neuroscience. It's a shame I actually have to take the time to break this down, but they're literally every single time you offer a critique of the social critique from these people, the new line of defense is, oh, well, they've been cited in this, and he's a neuroscientist, and he's this. Is well, you didn't even know them. You didn't even know them when they were nothing more than a psychologist or a neuroscientist. You only know them because they are now in this new media space. Therefore, their qualifications do not transfer over into this field. Too long didn't read. They're just commoners in this field. You're not above critique. You're not a distinguished scholar in political commentary or a distinguished scholar in social critique. You're just a commoner like the rest of us. And everything that you say is up for criticism. You don't have an ivory tower from which you can just speak. And because of your distinguished career in sociology, no one can say, well, sociology might be one of the fields, as I say it. And I'm just talking. Sociology might be one of the fields, but he's no sociologist. Neither is Sam Harris, Jordan Peterson, David Rubin. None of these people who attempt to give the appearance of intellectual superiority and bona fides that qualify them to be able to speak in these areas with above the critique of everyone else. No, not at all. Not at all. But this is the new tactic. This is the new, because what has happened, this is the last thing I think I'll say about it, and then I want to talk about something else. What has happened is, this is to be expected, actually, is what I want to say. This is to be expected because conservatism and racism and male supremacy and all of these things have been carried on the backs of oafs, of clowns, of just outright bigots who are disgusting, who, there was a time when you had a William F. Buckley. There was a time where you even had the Barry Goldwater. I know Barry Goldwater gets a really bad rap these days, but during his time, he was an intellectual. But there was a hard shift to the stupid column of the Ledger. It's when the party rejected Goldwater, or when the party shifted towards the moral majority and ditched Goldwater. That's when there was an entire era of people of conservative thought that was pushed on the back of idiocy. And so the reaction to that, or the natural outgrowth of progress, was a litany of scholars, of people who actually studied this work, who actually delved into the social sciences, and they came out with a body of work, or a long list, different bodies of works that actually gave an intellectual underpinning to our fight for justice, our fight against white supremacy, our fight against male supremacy. And so it only makes sense that the reaction to that would be pseudoscientists, people who take their work in another field, which you might be distinguished in that field, and come over and say, well, I just don't I should not have to call someone a her when I think she's a he. Right. And because of that really simple bigotry, someone like Jordan Peterson is launched into the stratosphere because he's a smart guy who it's just a hearkening back to the William F. Buckley. But if you go back and look at the William F. Buckley debate with my favorite writer and my favorite voice of all time, James Baldwin, you'll see the emptiness of this intellectualism. Right? William F. Buckley, while he had the appearance and the sound of intelligence and intellect and logic, his arguments were devoid of any substance. They were fatuous. And the argument of James Baldwin was sound and very methodical. And so they're attempting to bring back the day. And you know what? Hey, it's fine. It's fun. It's fun to actually, and I'm sorry, I hate to say it in this language, but for a person like me, it is fun to have an intellectual debate with someone on an issue and not just be resolved to having to fight against like religious fundamentalists. And the reason I hate to use that is because we are actually talking about the lives of people here. We're talking about the safety of people. And so I'm really hesitant to use that language, but it's difficult for a person like me because I actually do enjoy taking apart their arguments and letting that be the framework and the stage upon which we have these arguments, versus someone just saying, "Oh, you're going to hell because you support LGBTQ rights." So from that perspective, I appreciate the shift. But we as progressives and liberals and people who are generally not Republican or not conservative, we are so far behind the 8-ball. We're so far behind the 8-ball because we are losing ground, not in the intellectual space, but in the new media space, because we don't have the money. Let's just call it a spade a spade. We just don't have the money. We don't have the money from the top. We have people money, and that people money is really tied up in a whole lot of other platforms. It is what it is. Congratulations to everyone who's successful on the left. But in terms of like money from the top down, we don't have billionaires who would just put $10 million into a project like they did for Ben Shapiro. I'm estimating. But he had billionaires invest in the Daily Wire. We don't have billionaires who'll donate money to Dave Rubin, like to us, like they do Dave Rubin. We don't have people donating money to us like the money that's donated to Breitbart and Steve Bannon through his 501c3 shell company. Same thing with Tucker Carlson and the Daily Caller. Millions of dollars poured into the Daily Caller, which elevated Tucker Carlson into the position that he is in now. We don't have those billionaires, so there's a structural disadvantage in terms of funding new media to combat this. Most of us are asking for patrons, right? Most of them are going to be fine whether they get patrons or not. The added bonus is all of the patrons that they get. So there are structural disadvantages here, and we've got to find a way to fight back. Because now we are the reactionaries. Well, I mean, not technically, but we are in the position of having to react. We are on the defensive, having to react to every Tom, Dick, and scary idiot that they put up this week. I mean, who's going to be the next one? Who's going to be the next great intellectual from the right that if you actually just sit down and take apart their arguments, you're like, wow, this clown is a fool. But you never get the opportunity to battle them on a level playing field because they are now elevated to the ivory tower and they don't have the responsibility of answering to us common folks because they have such distinguished work in psychology. Well, yeah, your work in politics and social commentary is severely lacking, entirely fatuous and illogical. This is going to be the hardest shift that you have ever experienced on the Benjamin Dixon Show. I want to talk about something entirely different that has nothing to do with politics, except for the fact that this has become my way of detoxing from the world of politics. I joined my church choir. Insert a laugh track right there. I did. And it's like the most therapeutic thing I've ever done. And the reason I'm mentioning it to you is because like we live in a crazy world and you've got to get yourself a community of similar people who look like you. And I don't mean in race sense. I mean, they could be any color, but they look like what you're going through. Maybe they're the same age as you. Maybe they have the same type of work as you do. Maybe whatever it is, it doesn't have to be religious oriented. It's the importance of community. I can say this now personally, coming from Boston, like we were alienated. We were isolated, actually is the word I'm looking for. We were so isolated in Boston. And we came to Atlanta and, you know, we stumbled onto this church that is really dope. And like everybody looks like me. They're married with young kids and they're working multiple jobs and, you know, they're just trying to make their way through life. And, you know, it's a community. So I joined the choir and, you know, I have a tendency to like to sing. It's just the, you know, whatever, like in my shower, I sing. Everybody sings in the shower, right? And last night it just dawned on me. I'm like, you all, my audience, man, you have, I say, man, I don't mean to misgender anyone, but you all have to find yourself a community of like-minded people, whatever it is. I don't care what it is, but it's just important to have this because if you're out here trying to fight these fights that we fight and you're doing it by yourself, or you're just trying to survive 9 to 5, 10 to 6, overnight shifts, working 2 jobs, trying to pay the bills, trying to do all these, just trying to survive. I mean, having a community of people who think like you, who are going through the same struggles, who you could just be around and don't even have to talk about the problems. I'm not talking about like an AA support group. I mean, that's cool too. I'm just talking about just being around people who you can vibe off of, that you can have a community with. The importance of community, man. That's really what I just wanted to just drop on you at the end of this episode because you got to have it. Don't be out there by yourself. I know that's somewhat of what we do here on our show. We do provide a community. We do provide a way for you to be a part of something. But going in person, like seriously, it's really cool. You know, so get out of your house. Get out of your neighborhood. Go down to the local whatever. I don't know. Is meetup.com still a thing where you can meet a group of people and with similar hobbies and stuff? That was really a cool thing back in 2007 when I did it. But this is similar to it. So I just wanted to drop that on you because it's been such a positive influence on my life. Like yesterday, to give you an example, yesterday was non-stop for me. Like if I had, if I did a podcast yesterday, I don't know if I would have survived the day. I probably would have, lost it a little bit. It was that busy from 6 a.m. to 10 o'clock at night. And the only thing that kind of rejuvenated me was the fact that I went to choir rehearsal and I sat up there with all those, it's like a huge choir, like 100 people. And I got to sing to the top of my lungs. And, I could sing a little bit. I was going to joke and say I was off key and whatnot. I wasn't really, I could sing, but it was cool. And, so I encourage you to do the same thing. You ain't got to go join a church. I'm not saying that, because I know most of you who listen to me are atheists and I love all of you. But what I am saying is find you a community. And a community of people who could be a positive influence on you, because we live in very difficult times financially, economically, socially, culturally, politically, very tumultuous times. And it helps. It helps to have a community, bottom line. So go out and I don't know. I can't tell you where to go. I don't have a broad range of cultural recommendations for you. But there's something out there for you so that you don't have to fight this life alone, right? And if you're in Atlanta, I'll invite you to my church. And if my church ever starts tripping and, gets, crazy and homophobic and transphobic and all that stuff, then I won't go to that church anymore. I'm pretty solid on that. But so far, so good. Good enough for me to join the choir and tell you about it. All right, folks. That is all the time I have for you today. Gave you some fire at the beginning and some mush at the end, but hey, you never know what you're going to get on the Benjamin Dixon Show. I will see you tomorrow. Take care, everyone. Wait. Hopefully I'll see you tomorrow. I'm still working on some things. Busy schedule still, but you will see me at least on Friday. I promise you that. Take care, everyone, and I'll see you next time.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army.